Hello and welcome. It's March 13th, 2026, and exactly 14 hours ago, at 9 UTC, Earth didn't just experience a weather event, it experienced a physics event, a phenomenon that defies everything we know about natural occurrences. People in London, Paris, and even Cape Town saw something impossible in the sky. The sun's light didn't just shine as usual, it split into a coherent high-definition spectrum, a rainbow that covered the entire lit hemisphere of the planet, but not in the way you'd expect. This wasn't an arc, nor a halo, it was a planetary shield of diffracted light, something never seen before in recorded history. Picture this, you're standing in New York, watching the sky. Normally, atmospheric refraction behaves randomly, scattered by water vapor. But for 42 minutes on this extraordinary day, the atmosphere acted as if it were a giant, polished diamond lens. NASA's GO-19 satellite recorded this data, and the European Space Agency's Michio confirmed it instantly. The refractive index of the upper atmosphere shifted by exactly 0.004%. While this number may seem small, in terms of atmospheric physics, it's nothing short of violent. To achieve a global split in the solar spectrum like this, one would need to saturate the stratosphere with billions of tons of perfectly hexagonal crystals, or manipulate the light before it even reaches our air. And that's where 3 Atlas comes into play. When the data first reached the monitors at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, the initial assumption was sensor failure. After all, comets, which are simply chunks of dirty ice and rock, don't turn into optical lenses. They lack the geometric precision required to diffract solar radiation into specific wavelengths over a span of 12,000 kilometers. But the numbers were undeniable. At 9:02 UTC, the Deep Space Network detected a massive spike in ionization around 3 Iodlas, 180 million kilometers away. This celestial body, despite its distance, was able to influence photons hitting Earth with the kind of precision you'd expect from a laboratory laser. This is not just a strange occurrence, it's a message written in light, and the physics behind it implies something far more complex than a simple ball of ice floating through space. To understand this, let's put things into perspective. The probability of a natural comet tail aligning perfectly between the Sun and Earth to create a global prism effect is calculated at 1 inch 8.4 trillion. It's statistically zero, effectively impossible. Yet, millions of people around the world recorded this phenomenon. The question that continues to haunt astrophysicists isn't what happened, because we saw it happen. The real question is how. How does a celestial body generate a field capable of bending light with laser-like accuracy? This is not just a rare event. It's a message, a phenomenon we can't fully comprehend just yet. To understand the true magnitude of what happened on March 12, 2026, we need to take a closer look at the data sources involved. We aren't talking about shaky smartphone videos from the streets of London or eyewitness accounts. The information we have comes from some of the most sensitive photometric instruments humanity has ever built. At precisely 9:05 UTC, just 5 minutes after the global rainbow appeared, NASA's Deep Space Climate Observatory, DSCOVR, stationed at Lagrange Point 1, 1 million miles from Earth, registered a drop in solar intensity. This wasn't a shadow being cast on Earth, nor was it caused by any typical astronomical event. It was a filter. The data indicated that the solar radiation hitting the Earth's upper atmosphere had been stripped of specific frequencies, as though someone had placed a gigantic optical prism directly in front of our planet. To grasp the implications, think about the physics of a prism for a moment. Isaac Newton taught us that light bends when passing through a medium like glass, which has a higher density than air. This process separates the light into its constituent colors. Now, imagine doing this to the entire planet. To accomplish this on such a grand scale, you'd need a physical medium, a cloud, a gas, or a lens thousands of kilometers wide floating in space. But there was nothing there. NASA's radar sweeps showed a complete vacuum between Earth and the Sun. No dust cloud, no debris field from the 3 Atlas comets, and yet the light was bending. This is where the story takes a more dramatic turn from what seemed like a meteorological curiosity to a full-blown astrophysical crisis. At 9:12 UTC, 3 independent agencies cross-referenced their data. NASA's DS-COVER satellite detected a diffraction variance of 4.2 degrees, and the European Space Agency's Solar Orbiter, operating on a completely different trajectory, confirmed the phase shift in photons passing near the coordinates of the 3 Atlas comets. On the ground, the Very Large Telescope, VLT, in Chile, used its espresso spectrograph to analyze the rainbow light hitting the atmosphere. What they found was shocking. The Fraunhofer line's chemical fingerprints typically found in sunlight had been altered. 3 different sources, using different methods, all came to the same conclusion. The light hitting Earth wasn't just split, it had been engineered. This revelation is staggering. If you've ever studied optics, you know that light travels in straight lines, particularly in the vacuum of space. For light to bend without a physical lens, you would either need a gravitational distortion like a black hole or an electromagnetic field of such intensity that it interacts directly with photons themselves. But the Atlas comets are supposed to be simple celestial objects, comets made of ice, not powerful electromagnetic fields or black holes. Yet, the data from March 12th suggests something far more complex, something far beyond our current understanding of comets. To fully comprehend the significance of what occurred on March 12th, we must take a deeper look at the anomaly itself. Let's go back to the core question. How does a comet or any celestial object manipulate light in such a precise, laser-like fashion? The data we have now shows us something disturbing. The bending of light we witnessed is not just an accident or a freak occurrence. This wasn't a natural phenomenon that we can easily explain with current science. Instead, it points to something engineered, something designed to perform a function beyond the capabilities of known celestial objects. At 9:30 UTC, the European Space Agency held an emergency closed-door meeting. The briefing summary, which has since been analyzed by experts, concluded that the planetary prism event wasn't a passive occurrence, it was active. The data suggested that the atmosphere itself was being tuned, and this is where the implications become truly unsettling. Imagine Earth as a giant receiver dish, and the Sun as the transmitter. The 3 Atlas comets were acting as modulators, tweaking the frequency of solar light and splitting it into discrete bands, effectively cleaning the signal, as though tuning a radio to a precise frequency. Why would a celestial body do this? Why would it need to split solar light into distinct bands across the surface of a habited planet? At this point, conventional explanations start to break down. Some might suggest that this was caused by high-altitude ice crystals from a meteor shower, but this theory fails when put under scrutiny. Ice crystals scatter light, they don't band it into precise intervals, especially not at mathematically exact prime number intervals. You see, the gaps between the colors in the rainbow were spaced at specific distances, corresponding exactly to prime number sequences 2, 3, 5, 7, 11 nanometers apart. That's not how rainbows behave naturally. In nature, rainbows are messy, random, and blurred. This event, however, was perfectly structured, with hard edges and precision, much more like a signal than a natural phenomenon. The implications are profound. What we witnessed wasn't simply an optical phenomenon. This was a structured signal masquerading as a weather event, and the data confirms that the light wasn't just split, it was engineered. We're no longer talking about a simple atmospheric refractive effect. We're dealing with something that seems to have been intentionally altered on a planetary scale. Let's take a step back and truly grasp the magnitude of what we're dealing with. At 9:45 UTC, the atmospheric phenomena began to shift, but the data didn't stop flowing. Something truly extraordinary happened. For about 3 minutes, the atmosphere above the Atlantic Ocean became completely still, as if frozen in time. According to the European Center for Medium-Range Weather Forecasts, the air molecules aligned themselves, behaving like magnets and iron filings when placed near a magnetic field. This isn't supposed to happen in gases. The randomness of gas molecules moving at high speeds is a fundamental aspect of thermodynamics, a concept central to physics. But what happened next defied all expectations. The air above the Atlantic aligned. Nitrogen molecules positioned themselves in a perfect north-south direction. This is a phenomenon known as a Bose-Einstein condensate, a state of matter where atoms behave like a single wave. However, this state only occurs at temperatures near absolute zero in controlled lab conditions with just a few thousand atoms. What we're talking about here is 5 quadrillion tons of atmosphere aligning at room temperature. This is a state of matter that should not exist under normal conditions. To achieve such alignment, you would need an extremely powerful magnetic field, one so strong it could tear the iron out of your blood and destroy electronics. The strength required would be over 100 Tesla, a field strong enough to disrupt the planet's magnetic field. But here's the mystery. There was no magnetic spike detected. The magnetometers at the Greenwich Observatory showed nothing unusual. So how did the air molecules align without any magnetic field? This is where the physics gets even stranger. The only way to align matter in such a perfect way is through phonon resonance, using a specific frequency of vibration to force matter into a geometric lattice. And this is where the prime number gaps in the rainbow spectrum become critical. Those weren't just colors missing from the light. Those were frequencies being absorbed by the air itself. The 3 Atlas comets were emitting a resonance signal that turned the atmosphere into a giant crystal. Let that sink in for a moment. The air you were breathing, the atmosphere around you, had the optical properties of a low-grade diamond for those 3 minutes. This is why the rainbow appeared the way it did. It wasn't just light bending. It was diffracting through a structured lattice that shouldn't even exist in nature. The consequences of this crystallization were immediate. At 10:47 UTC, pilots flying over the poles reported an eerie, sudden silence in the radio spectrum. No static, no interference, just pure, uninterrupted silence. The aligned atmosphere had effectively acted like a fiber optic cable transmitting signals with zero resistance while blocking everything else. The probability of the atmosphere spontaneously organizing itself into such a crystalline structure is so low that it is considered effectively impossible. And yet, here we are. What's even more unsettling is that the particles in the air weren't just drifting aimlessly, they held their position, maintaining a grid against the wind, gravity, and the Earth's rotation. Billions of microscopic tetrahedrons were suspended at exactly 82 kilometers altitude, forming a planetary mesh. This wasn't natural, this wasn't random, this was orchestrated. The particles were not behaving like typical atmospheric particles. They were synchronized, like a hive mind on a molecular level. If this is a natural phenomenon, then nature has just demonstrated a level of organization we've never seen before. If it's not, then we are looking at something far more disturbing, a weapon, a controlled structure, or something we're not yet capable of understanding. Now, As the strange event started to settle, the world was left with more questions than answers. At 11 UTC, as the atmospheric rainbow began to fade, the data streams shifted once again. The rainbow wasn't just a beautiful anomaly in the sky, it was a clear indicator of something far deeper. As the phenomenon began to dissolve, scientists realized that the interaction wasn't over. It wasn't simply a visual spectacle, it had triggered something that was now unfolding before our eyes. The atmospheric alignment, which had lasted for exactly 180 seconds, returned to chaos. But the data from several scientific agencies showed that something had been left behind. The rainbow had not only split the light into its distinct components, it had also deposited something into our atmosphere, a residue, one that wasn't part of any known terrestrial decay chain. A new isotope was detected in the upper stratosphere, technetium-99, a synthetic element that does not naturally occur on Earth. This discovery was staggering. Technetium-99 is not found in nature. It's a synthetic isotope, one that's only produced in nuclear reactors. So, how did it find its way into the upper atmosphere? How did this isotope, which doesn't belong in our stratosphere, become widespread across the sunlit hemisphere? This isn't a simple meteorological event. This is something entirely different. The prism that caused the global rainbow wasn't just an optical phenomenon, it was a delivery system injecting synthetic matter into our atmosphere. The presence of technetium-99 is an undeniable piece of evidence that something intentional occurred. The prism effect wasn't just about refracting light, it was about transferring matter, manipulating our atmosphere in ways that were once thought to be impossible. The implications of this discovery are profound. We are not just witnessing a natural event, we are observing a highly engineered phenomenon, something that's not of this earth. This brings us to a chilling realization. If this event was orchestrated, then it suggests a level of technological advancement far beyond anything we could have imagined. At 13:15 UTC, 2 hours after the rainbow had faded, NASA's ER-2 high-altitude research plane, flying at 70,000 feet over the Pacific, detected something else. Something that wasn't in any prior data, something that wasn't supposed to exist. The onboard mass spectrometer, designed to sample the air at high altitudes, had its readings flatline. But it wasn't because the air was empty. Instead, the sensors were overwhelmed by the presence of a specific element that should not be there, technetium-99. This discovery wasn't just a footnote in the data, it was a confirmation of the disturbing truth. The phenomenon we witnessed wasn't random. It wasn't a natural comet passing by. It was engineered, and it left behind a synthetic trace that no natural process could explain. The residue wasn't just dust or debris, it was a calculated injection of material into our atmosphere. This was more than just a cosmic oddity. It was a message, a warning, or perhaps the first step of something much more complex and far-reaching. Now, the data we have on March 12, 2026 paints a disturbing picture of an event that defies all known laws of physics. The global refractive event that split the solar light into a precise banded spectrum across Earth's dayside was not an isolated phenomenon. It was a planetary scale manipulation, one that changed the very structure of the atmosphere. We know this for a fact. The atmosphere aligned into a crystalline state for 180 seconds, which is physically impossible at room temperature. We also know that synthetic technetium-99 was found in the atmosphere, a substance that cannot occur naturally. This is the undeniable evidence. A comet-like object, 3 Atlas, initiated a series of events from 180 million kilometers away without generating any heat. There was no thermal spike, no combustion, no visible exhaust. This is a violation of thermodynamics. The entire scientific community is divided over the implications. Some are trying to fit this data into the existing models, but others, some of the brightest minds in theoretical physics, are asking a more unsettling question. Is this a scan? If this is a scan, it means that the rainbow we saw wasn't just a show of light. It was a tool for analyzing the biosphere of our planet. The technetium 99 left behind in the upper atmosphere suggests that this was not a random occurrence, but a targeted event. If 3 Atlas is indeed an artifact, then what we witnessed was not a comet, but a piece of advanced technology capable of manipulating our atmosphere and even altering the chemistry of our world. And this is where the story takes an even darker turn. The data shows that the particles left behind are not simply drifting in the wind. They are holding position, maintaining a grid against gravity, wind, and the rotation of the Earth. This is not just an atmospheric phenomenon, it's a planetary scale manipulation. The particles in our atmosphere are being controlled in a way that defies all understanding of fluid dynamics. They are suspended at 82 kilometers altitude, forming a planetary mesh that is actively transmitting signals back to 3 Atlas. As we speak, the Green Bank telescope is picking up a new telemetry signal, not from 3 Atlas to Earth, but from the particles in our atmosphere to 3 Atlas. The mesh of particles is transmitting data back to the object that started it all. The clock is ticking, and every hour, the grid density increases by 0.6%. At this rate, the mesh will be fully formed in 48 hours. This is not a natural phenomenon. This is not a random event. We are witnessing something far beyond our understanding, something that could change the very fabric of our reality. This is not just a cosmic anomaly. This is something engineered, something we are only beginning to comprehend. The question now is, what happens next? What is the purpose of this planetary scale manipulation? And who or what has the power to control our planet in such a precise, calculated manner? Stay tuned, because the answers to these questions are unfolding before us, and they could redefine everything we know about the universe. If you found this video eye-opening, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more updates on this ongoing mystery. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think is happening, and what does this mean for our future?